Elders say, sometimes a child collapses not because her body is weak, but because the truth around her has been ignored for too long. That morning, the sun rose proudly over the Adebayo estate. Golden light spilled across marble floors. Birds sang from manicured trees. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. Inside the mansion, power lived comfortably, but care lived quietly. And quietly it was being ignored. Little Zara Adebayo, the billionaire's only daughter, stood near the grand staircase wearing her favorite yellow dress with tiny red flowers stitched along the edges. She loved that dress because the maid had chosen it for her, not her father, not the designers. The maid. Zara held the railing tightly. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale. Across the hall, Mr. Kelvin Adebayo, one of the richest men in the country, spoke loudly into his phone. "Cancel the meeting," he said impatiently. "No, reschedule. My time is not flexible." He paced in his deep red robe, authority stitched into every movement. Behind him, doctors stood quietly. White coats, serious faces, expensive opinions. "She's fine," one of them said calmly. "Children faint sometimes. Stress, weakness." Kelvin nodded. "See," he said, "nothing serious." But the maid was watching. Asha, the maid, stood near the doorway. Yellow headscarf, simple clothes, sharp eyes. She had raised Zara since infancy. She had noticed the signs weeks ago: the loss of appetite, the quiet tears at night, the way Zara held her chest when she laughed. But Asha was just a maid. And in that house, maids did not interrupt doctors. Zara took one step forward, then another. Her legs trembled. "Asha," she whispered. The maid's heart jumped. She rushed forward, but it was too late. Zara collapsed. Her small body hit the marble floor with a sound that did not belong in a house of wealth, a sound too real, too human. "Zara!" Asha screamed. Doctors rushed forward. Kelvin froze. Time slowed. Elders say, when a child falls, the earth listens. They lifted Zara. Her eyes fluttered. Her lips turned pale. "Asha," she murmured weakly. Kelvin stepped closer. "What's happening?" he demanded. The doctors checked her pulse. "It's faint," one said, "but she'll be fine." Asha shook her head. "No," she said softly. Everyone turned. Kelvin frowned. "What did you say?" Asha hesitated. Her voice trembled. "She has been holding her chest at night," she said. "She cries when she breathes deeply. She hasn't eaten properly in days." The room went silent. One doctor scoffed lightly. "With respect," he said, "you're not trained." Kelvin waved his hand. "Enough. Take Zara to her room." Just like that, the moment passed. But the truth did not. Zara lay in bed. Doctors left. Meetings resumed. The house breathed again. But Asha stayed. She sat beside the bed, holding Zara's hand. "You'll be okay," she whispered. Zara opened her eyes slightly. "They don't hear me," she said weakly. Asha swallowed hard. "I hear you," she replied. That promise would soon change everything. Later that day, Kelvin stood with his advisors. Stocks, deals, expansions. Life moved as if a child had not collapsed that morning. One advisor spoke. "Sir, the board is concerned about your availability." Kelvin sighed. "My daughter is fine," he said sharply. Doctor confirmed it. "But elders say confirmation is not the same as truth." That night, Zara's condition worsened. Her breathing grew uneven. Sweat covered her forehead. Asha noticed first. She placed her hand on Zara's chest. Her heart raced and skipped. Asha's face changed. This was not fainting. This was not stress. This was something deeper, something hidden, something the doctors had missed. Asha stood up. She walked to the medical reports left behind. She could not read everything, but she could see patterns. Numbers too high, notes too brief, tests too shallow. She remembered something. Her own sister collapsed suddenly. Doctors dismissed it until it was too late. Her chest tightened. "No," Asha whispered. "Not again." She rushed to Kelvin's office. He was on another call. "Sir," she said urgently. Kelvin raised a finger. "Not now." Asha stepped closer. "She's not fine." Kelvin turned sharply. "I said the doctors." "They didn't see it," Asha interrupted, voice shaking. "But I did." Silence fell. Kelvin stared at her. "How dare you?" he said coldly. Asha lowered her head, but she did not step back. "Because I love her," she said simply. That sentence hung in the air. Love. A word Kelvin had money for, but no time for. Kelvin laughed bitterly. "You're overstepping," he said. "Go back to your duties." Asha hesitated. Then she said something that changed the direction of fate. "She is not collapsing because she is weak," Asha said. "She is collapsing because something inside her is failing." Kelvin's face hardened. "You're dismissed for tonight." Asha obeyed, but fear followed her. That night, as rain tapped against the windows, Asha returned quietly to Zara's room. She checked her pulse. Too fast. She checked her breathing. Too shallow. She leaned close to Zara's chest. And then she heard it. A sound. Wrong. Irregular. A whispered danger. Asha straightened slowly, her heart pounding. She knew it now. What no doctor had seen. The maid had found. And if she was right, then by morning, the billionaire would face a truth money could not silence. Elders say, when wisdom wears simple clothes, pride often refuses to greet it. And as the night deepened, the mansion slept, unaware that its greatest test had just begun. Elders say, when truth is ignored inside a house, it escapes through the mouths of neighbors. Morning arrived quietly at the Adebayo estate, too quietly, the kind of silence that carries fear inside it. Zara did not wake up smiling that day. Her eyes opened slowly, as if they were unsure whether the world was safe enough to face again. Asha was already beside her. She had not slept. She sat upright, alert, her yellow headscarf slightly loosened, her eyes fixed on the child's chest, rising, falling unevenly, still breathing, but not comfortably. Zara tried to sit up. Pain crossed her face. "Asha," she whispered. "Yes, my child," Asha replied instantly. "My chest feels heavy," Zara said, "like someone is sitting on it." Asha swallowed hard. She placed her hand gently over Zara's heart. It beat fast, then slow, then fast again. Her fingers trembled. Elders say, the body speaks before it screams. And Zara's body was speaking loudly now. Downstairs, Kelvin Adebayo ate breakfast while reading reports. Red headlines, green profits, yellow warnings, ignored. His assistant stood nearby. "Sir," he said carefully, "the staff are talking." Kelvin did not look up. "About what?" "About the incident yesterday." Kelvin sighed. "I told them," she fainted. "Yes, sir," the assistant replied. "But they say the maid is worried." Kelvin's jaw tightened. "That woman is becoming a problem," he said. "She's filling heads with fear." Fear. Kelvin disliked fear, because fear questioned control. In the staff quarters, whispers moved like smoke. She collapsed again last night. They say the maid stayed awake all night. The doctors didn't stay. A cook leaned closer. "My cousin's child died like that," she said softly. "They said it was stress." Another shook her head. "No," she whispered. "It was the heart." The word spread. Heart. By midday, 2 more doctors arrived. More expensive, more confident. They surrounded Zara's bed like a wall of authority. Asha stood aside, silent, watching. One doctor checked Zara's pulse. Another listened briefly to her chest. "She's anxious," one said. Children from wealthy homes sometimes absorb pressure. Kelvin nodded approvingly. "I've been saying that." Asha clenched her fists. She stepped forward slowly. "Sir," she said carefully, "may I speak?" Kelvin hesitated. Doctors glanced at each other. One smirked. With respect, he said, "This is not your place." Kelvin raised a hand. "Go on," he said impatiently. Asha took a breath. "She doesn't sleep flat anymore," she said. "She gasps when she laughs." And when she runs, her lips turn pale. The room grew quiet. One doctor frowned. That information should have been reported earlier. Asha met his eyes. I tried. Kelvin shifted uncomfortably. Still, the doctor said, nothing here suggests danger. Asha shook her head slowly. Then you are not looking properly, she said. Gasps. Kelvin turned sharply. Enough, he snapped. You are crossing a line. Asha bowed her head, but her voice did not bow. If I am wrong, she said, then let me be punished. The doctors exchanged glances, but none ordered further tests. Outside the mansion, the village buzzed. News traveled fast. A rich man's child collapsing was not just news. It was a warning. At the market, women spoke in hushed tones. When the rich ignore signs, the poor bury children, one said. Under the mango tree, elders gathered. One elder tapped his staff. A child does not fall twice without reason, he said. Another nodded. And when wisdom is ignored, tragedy sharpens its knife. Back in the mansion, Zara worsened. Her breathing became audible. Asha noticed her fingers turning slightly blue. She panicked. She ran to Kelvin again. Sir, she pleaded, she needs deeper tests. Kelvin stood up abruptly. That is enough, he said coldly. You are not a doctor. No, Asha said quietly. But I am not blind either. Kelvin's face darkened. You are suspended, he said, until further notice. The word struck like thunder. Asha froze. Sir, leave the room, he commanded. Zara stirred weakly. Asha, she murmured. Kelvin hesitated, then hardened. Now. Asha looked at Zara one last time. She leaned down. I'm still here, she whispered. Then she left. That evening, rain fell again. Heavy, unforgiving. Zara lay restless. Doctors left once more. Kelvin paced. Uneasy now, because confidence was cracking. In the staff quarters, Asha packed her things. Her hands shook, but her mind was clear. She could not leave. Not now. Not when danger was so close. She remembered her village. She remembered her sister. She remembered the sound Zara's chest made. Wrong, wrong, wrong. At midnight, a scream cut through the mansion. Zara gasped for air. Kelvin rushed in. Doctors were called. Again, machines beeped erratically. One doctor frowned deeply now. This is unusual, he muttered. Kelvin's heart pounded. For the first time, fear broke through his certainty. Do something, he shouted. They tried. Oxygen. Medication. Still, Zara struggled. Her chest heaved. Her eyes rolled back slightly. Kelvin shouted for Asha. No response. She's suspended, someone whispered. Kelvin froze. Suspended. The word tasted bitter now. Outside, thunder roared. Inside, Zara collapsed again. Harder. Longer. Silence followed. The machine screamed. Doctors panicked. Kelvin felt his world tilt. Elders say, when pride blocks the door, disaster climbs through the window. Just as chaos peaked, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Move. Asha stood in the doorway, soaked from rain, eyes blazing, yellow headscarf clinging to her face. She pushed past stunned doctors, knelt beside Zara, placed her ear to her chest, listened, then she shouted one sentence that changed everything. It's not stress, she said. It's her heart, and it's failing now. Silence. The doctors stared. Kelvin stared. Fear swallowed the room. Because deep down, they all knew the maid was right. Elders say, when danger reaches the heart of a child, even lies begin to tremble. The room shook with noise. Machines screamed. Doctors shouted orders. Rain battered the windows like angry spirits demanding entry. And in the center of it all lay Zara Adebayo, small, pale, struggling for breath. Kelvin Adebayo stood frozen. His world, built on control, was collapsing faster than his daughter's chest could rise. Asha did not wait for permission. She acted. She lifted Zara's head slightly, adjusted her position. Turn her on her side, she ordered. One doctor hesitated. This is highly irregular. Do it, Kelvin shouted. The command came from fear now, not authority. They obeyed. Asha pressed her ear to Zara's chest again. Her face tightened. This rhythm is wrong, she said. Too fast and too slow. One doctor frowned deeply. That's not possible, he muttered. We ran standard tests. Asha looked up at him. Standard does not save a child, she said. Attention does. The words sliced through the room. Another doctor stepped back. We need a cardiologist, he said. Kelvin's eyes widened. Why wasn't one called earlier? He demanded. Silence answered him. Heavy, uncomfortable, guilty. Minutes passed like years. A specialist arrived. Older, quieter, eyes trained by humility rather than arrogance. He listened carefully, longer than the others. His face darkened. This child has a hidden heart condition, he said slowly. Congenital, rare. Kelvin's knees weakened. Can you fix it? He asked. The doctor looked at Asha, then back at Kelvin. If we had seen this earlier, he began. The sentence did not finish. It didn't need to. The room filled with shame. The younger doctors avoided eye contact. Kelvin turned to them. You said she was fine, he whispered. No one replied. Elders say, when authority is wrong, silence becomes a confession. Zara gasped again. The specialist spoke urgently. We must act now. Surgery. Immediate. High risk. Kelvin nodded frantically. Do whatever it takes. The doctor paused. There is something else, he said. Kelvin's heart sank. The stress worsened her condition, he continued. And stress does not come from money. His eyes drifted briefly to Asha, then back to Kelvin. As Zara was rushed away, word spread beyond the mansion. Ambulances, sirens, lights. Neighbors gathered. Phones came out. The village knew now. Under the same mango tree, elders rose to their feet. This is no longer private, one said. When a child's life is ignored, the community must speak. At the hospital, tension reached breaking point. Kelvin paced. Asha sat quietly, hands clasped, praying. A younger doctor approached Kelvin nervously. Sir, we underestimated the situation. Kelvin turned slowly. Underestimated. That word. My daughter collapsed twice, he said quietly, and you called it stress. The doctor swallowed. Kelvin's voice did not rise, which made it worse. If she dies, Kelvin said, it will not be because of her heart. The doctor looked down. Hours passed. Finally, the specialist emerged. Faces turned. Time held its breath. She is stable, he said. For now. Kelvin collapsed into a chair. Relief flooded, but it was not clean relief. It carried guilt, and fear, and questions. The specialist continued. She will survive, he said, but only because someone noticed what we miss. His eyes moved toward Asha. Who is she? He asked. Kelvin hesitated. The truth waited. She is our maid, Kelvin said quietly. The doctor nodded. Then today, he said, a maid saved your daughter's life. The words echoed. News cameras arrived. Whispers turned into headlines. Outside, villagers gathered. Inside, Kelvin stood before them later that day, under pressure, exposed. Elders faced him. One elder spoke. You ignored wisdom because it wore simple clothes. Kelvin bowed his head. I was wrong, he said. The words tasted unfamiliar, but necessary. Asha stood behind him, silent, strong. Zara slept peacefully now, alive. For the moment, elders say, truth does not shout. It waits until the noise dies. And that night, the noise finally stopped, leaving truth standing alone. Elders say, a man may rule his house alone, but when a child's life is shaken, the village becomes a judge. Morning broke differently that day. The sun still rose. Birds still sang. But the air around the Adebayo name felt heavier. News had escaped the mansion walls. Not whispered anymore. Spoken, loudly, outside the hospital gates. People gathered. Neighbors. Workers. Women with baskets paused mid-step. Men leaned on walking sticks. Phones buzzed. Did you hear? The maid noticed what doctors missed. The billionaire almost lost his child. Truth moved faster than luxury cars. Inside the hospital, Kelvin Adebayo stood alone by the window. He watched the crowd grow. For the first time in his life, the people were not waiting to admire him. They were waiting to understand him. That terrified him more than losing money ever could. Asha sat quietly near Zara's room. She had not slept. Her yellow headscarf was wrinkled now, damp with dried rain, but her eyes were steady. She was used to being invisible. What she was not used to was being seen. The specialist approached Kelvin again. "Sir," he said carefully, "there are questions." Kelvin turned. "What kind of questions?" "From the hospital board," the doctor replied, "and from the community." Kelvin exhaled sharply. "I'll handle it. But elders say, when consequences arrive, they do not ask who is ready." By noon, the elders came. Not summoned, not invited. They came because it was their duty. They walked slowly into the hospital hall. Traditional clothing, faces carved by time and wisdom. The crowd fell silent. Kelvin felt smaller with every step they took toward him. An elder spoke. "Your daughter lives today," he said, "because someone listened instead of dismissing." Kelvin nodded. "I owe her my gratitude," he said, glancing at Asha. The elder raised a finger. "Gratitude is not enough." The word cut sharply. Another elder stepped forward. "You ignored warning signs," she said. "You silenced concern. You trusted power more than care." Kelvin's mouth opened. No defense came. A murmur spread through the crowd. He fired her voice. He nearly buried his child. Money cannot hear a heartbeat. Kelvin closed his eyes. Each whisper felt deserved. A reporter stepped forward. "Sir," he asked, "do you regret suspending the maid?" Kelvin opened his eyes. Asha felt her chest tighten. He looked at her, really looked, not as staff, not as background, as a human being who loved his child. "Yes," he said. One word. Heavy, honest. "I regret it." Gasps rippled. Cameras flashed. Another reporter shouted, "Will you fire the doctors?" The question struck a nerve. Kelvin paused. Then he spoke slowly. "This is not about blame," he said. "It is about listening." The elders nodded, because elders know punishment without understanding only repeats mistakes. Still, consequences could not be avoided. The hospital announced an internal investigation. Doctors were questioned. Protocols were rewritten. New rules formed. All because someone without a title spoke up. Later, Kelvin approached Asha. They stood apart from the noise. "I was wrong," he said quietly. Asha did not answer immediately. Forgiveness does not rush. "I asked to be heard," she said. "I was ignored." Kelvin lowered his head. "I know." She looked toward Zara's room. "She survives today," Asha continued, "but this was avoidable." Kelvin swallowed. "Yes." "I don't want thanks," Asha said. "I want assurance." "Of what?" Kelvin asked. "That care will never again be treated as lesser than power." Silence followed. Then Kelvin nodded. "You have my word." Elders say, a promise made after fear is different from one made before wisdom. That evening, Kelvin stood before the staff. All of them. Drivers, cooks, cleaners, guards. People he had never addressed together before. "I failed," he said simply. The word shocked them. "I failed my daughter," he continued, "and I failed those who tried to protect her." Asha stood among them. He turned to her. "You will not be suspended," he said. "You will be respected." Tears filled some eyes. Zara woke briefly that night, weak, but smiling. She reached for Asha's hand. "You stayed," she whispered. Asha smiled gently. "Always." Kelvin watched. Something shifted inside him, a quiet breaking. Outside, elders spoke among themselves. "The child will live," one said, "but the man must change." Another nodded. "A lesson was delivered," she said. Now we watch if it has learned. As night settled, Kelvin sat alone. No phone, no meetings, just thoughts. He replayed everything. The collapse, the dismissal, the warning signs. He realized something painful. He had trusted systems, not people, and people had saved his child. Elders say, a child's fall can teach a father how to stand. And as Kelvin looked through the glass at his sleeping daughter, one truth became unavoidable. This story was no longer about a collapsing child. It was about a collapsing belief, and what would rise in its place. Elders say, when danger passes, the noise fades, but a lesson remains, waiting for the heart to accept it. Night wrapped itself gently around the hospital. The crowd outside had thinned. Cameras were gone. Whispers had softened into tired murmurs. But inside Kelvin Adebayo's chest, the storm had not ended. Zara slept. Machines hummed quietly now, not screaming, not alarming, just breathing alongside her, like careful guardians afraid to make mistakes again. Kelvin sat beside her bed, not standing, not pacing, sitting. That alone was new. He watched her chest rise and fall, slowly, steadily. Every breath felt like a fragile gift he had almost lost. Asha stood near the doorway. She did not intrude. She never did. She folded her hands and waited, as she always had, ready, but unseen. Kelvin noticed her shadow on the wall. He turned. "Asha," he said softly. She stepped forward. "Yes, sir?" That word, sir, felt heavier now. Kelvin hesitated. "I don't know how to say this properly," he admitted. Asha waited. Silence is something caregivers understand well. "I keep replaying that morning," Kelvin continued. "When she fell, I heard the sound. But I didn't listen to what it meant." His voice broke slightly. Asha lowered her eyes. "She tried to tell you," Asha said gently. "Children always do." Kelvin nodded. "I was afraid," he confessed. Not of losing her, but of losing control. The truth surprised even him. Elders say, confession is the first door pride unlocks. Zara stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. "Asha," she whispered. Asha rushed forward instantly. "I'm here, my child." Zara smiled faintly. Then she looked at her father. "Papa," she said weakly, "you were very loud today." Kelvin swallowed. "I was scared," he said. Zara frowned slightly. "Scared people don't listen," she said. The words were simple, but they landed like stones in still water. Kelvin leaned closer. "I'm listening now," he said. Zara studied his face. Then she said something that cut deeper than accusation. "When I fell," she said slowly, "I thought maybe you wouldn't notice." Kelvin closed his eyes. Pain pierced him sharper than fear ever had. "I noticed," he whispered. "But too late," Zara replied. Asha looked away. She knew that tone, the tone of a child who had learned early not to expect. Kelvin took Zara's hand. "I don't want to be that father," he said. "The one who comes after fall." Zara squeezed his fingers weakly. "Then don't," she said. "Children are cruel only because they are honest." Later that night, Asha stepped out quietly. She walked down the corridor, her legs finally shaking now that danger had passed. She leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and breathed, for the first time in days. Mama Efua approached her. "You did well," the elder woman said. Asha shook her head. "I did what love demanded." Mama Efua smiled sadly. "That is why it is rare," she replied. Inside the room, Kelvin remained seated long after Zara fell asleep again. He stared at his reflection in the darkened glass. He did not recognize the man looking back. That man looked smaller, and somehow clearer. Memories flooded him. Missed dinners, unanswered questions, nannies dismissed without thought. He remembered saying once, "She has everything money can buy." Now he understood the lie hidden inside that sentence. The specialist returned quietly. "She'll recover," he said, "but her life must slow down." Kelvin nodded. "Mine, too," he replied. The doctor paused. That would help her more than medicine. By morning, Kelvin made his first real decision. Not as a billionaire. As a father. He canceled everything. Meetings, trips, deals. His assistant protested. The board can wait, Kelvin said firmly. My daughter cannot. He walked to Asha. I want you to stay, he said. Not as staff. Asha looked up. Then as what? She asked. Kelvin hesitated. The word mattered. As family, he said finally. The room went still. Asha's eyes filled, but she did not cry. I never asked for that title, she said. I already lived it. Kelvin nodded. I know. Outside, elders spoke quietly. The child survived, one said, but the father is only beginning. Another replied, good. That journey should never be easy. Later that day, Kelvin wheeled Zara into sunlight. She squinted, smiled. Asha, she said, the light feels kinder today. Asha smiled back. Because you're listening to your body now. Kelvin watched them. Two people connected not by blood, but by devotion. And he understood something painful and beautiful. Love had been present all along. He had simply been too loud to hear it. Elders say, when a man learns too late, he must live the rest of his life, proving the lesson was not wasted. As the sun dipped low, casting red and yellow light across the hospital garden, Kelvin Adebayo sat beside his daughter and the maid who saved her, not above them, not ahead of them, but with them. And that was where change truly began. Elders say, a wound that nearly kills does not heal quietly. It demands change. The sun rose gently over the Adebayo estate, but nothing inside it felt the same. The gates were open earlier than usual, not for guests, not for business, but for people. Word had spread, not the kind spread by gossip this time, but the kind carried by hope. The billionaire has changed. He sits with his child. He listens to the maid. In villages and cities alike, people talk when power bends. Kelvin Adebayo stood in the courtyard. No suit, no tie, just a simple shirt, sleeves rolled up. Around him stood his staff. All of them. Cooks who had never spoken to him directly. Gardeners who had never looked him in the eye. Drivers who knew his schedule better than his child did. And Asha stood among them. Quiet, steady. Kelvin cleared his throat. I asked you all here, he began, because silence has ruled this house for too long. People shifted uncomfortably. Silence had always protected them, or so they thought. I nearly lost my daughter, Kelvin continued, not because of fate, but because voices were ignored. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I do not want that kind of house anymore, he said. Elders say, a man's apology is only powerful when followed by action. Kelvin knew that. From that day, rules changed, not written on paper, written in behavior. A health council was formed inside the estate, not doctors alone, caregivers, drivers, teachers, even cleaners. Anyone could speak. Anyone could be heard. Asha was asked to lead it. She hesitated. I am not educated, she said quietly. Kelvin shook his head. You are informed, he replied. There's a difference. Some doctors resisted. This is unnecessary, one complained. We are professionals. Kelvin responded calmly. Professionals miss what care caught. The room fell silent. Change always embarrasses pride. Outside the estate, people watched closely. The billionaire's daughter returned home slowly, wheelchair first, then walking, then running, but always watched, always supported. Zara changed too. She spoke more, asked questions, demanded answers. Once, when a visitor dismissed Asha rudely, Zara said sharply, She saved my life. Speak carefully. The room froze. Kelvin smiled quietly. Elders noticed. The child has found her voice, one said. And the father? Another asked. He is learning when not to speak. Kelvin began attending community gatherings, not as sponsor, as participant. He sat under trees, listened to elders. He heard stories of children lost due to neglect, of mothers dismissed, of workers ignored. Each story pressed deeper. One evening, an elder looked at him and said, You were powerful before. Now you are dangerous. Kelvin frowned. What do you mean? You know what silence costs now, the elder replied. That knowledge changes men. Inside the estate, staff morale shifted. People walked taller, spoke freer. Mistakes were corrected early. Lives were protected. But not everyone welcomed the change. Business partners complained. You've gone soft, one said. This is not how empires are run. Kelvin responded calmly. Empires collapse when people inside them are invisible. That meeting ended quickly. At night, Kelvin still struggled. Guilt does not leave easily. He would sit by Zara's bed, watching her sleep. Asha often sat nearby. Not needed, but present. Presence had saved them once. It would not be underestimated again. One night, Kelvin spoke quietly. If you had not insisted, he said, I would have buried my child. Asha did not reply, because some truths do not need echo. Elders say, when a man changes alone, it is weakness. When he changes publicly, it is responsibility. The Adebayo name began to mean something different. Not fear, not distance, but accountability. Yet the village waited, because elders also say, the test of change is not words. It is what happens when pressure returns. And pressure was coming. A scandal brewed. A hospital across town ignored a warning. A child collapsed. This time, the ending was not kind. Eyes turned toward Kelvin, toward his example, toward his response. The story was no longer private. It was public, and Kelvin knew what he did next would decide, whether his lesson was learned or merely survived. As the sun dipped low, red and yellow light washing over the courtyard, Kelvin stood beside Asha and Zara, not as employer, not as rescuer, but as a man changed by listening too late, and determined never to repeat it. Elders say, a life saved is a blessing. A system changed is a legacy. And the village leaned forward, waiting to see what legacy Kelvin Adebayo would choose. Elders say, a man may learn a lesson in private, but only the public can confirm if he has truly changed. The morning the news broke, it did not knock. It burst. A child had collapsed at a private clinic across the city. Just like Zara, warnings had been given. Symptoms were ignored. A caregiver had spoken. Too softly, the child did not survive. By midday, the city was restless. Radio stations spoke of negligence. Social media burned with anger. Parents hugged their children tighter. And one name was repeated in every discussion. Kelvin Adebayo. Not because he was guilty, but because he had changed. Will he speak? Will he act? Or was his transformation only for his own child? Elders say, the world watches loud men, but it judges quiet actions. Kelvin sat in his study. The report lay open on his desk. Facts, timelines, ignored warnings. He felt sick. Across the room, Asha stood silently. She had read the report too. She did not speak. She never rushed truth. This could have been Zara, Kelvin said quietly. Asha nodded. Yes, that was all. Sometimes agreement hurts more than accusation. Kelvin stood. Call the press, he said. His assistant froze. Sir, are you sure? Your advisors recommend distance. Kelvin looked up. Distance is how children die, he replied. The press conference was packed. Cameras, microphones, anger disguised as curiosity. Kelvin walked to the podium. No prepared speech. No legal shield. Just truth. I am here, he began, because silence has already taken one child. Gasps echoed. I cannot bring that child back, he continued, but I can prevent the next one from being ignored. A reporter shouted, This clinic is not yours. Why involve yourself? Kelvin did not flinch. Because I once ignored a warning too, he said, and my child almost paid for it. The room fell silent. Another voice called out, What are you going to do? Kelvin paused. This was the moment, the one elders warn about, the moment where redemption demands sacrifice. I will fund an independent caregiver alert system, Kelvin said, across all partner hospitals. Whispers erupted. No warning will be dismissed again, he continued, regardless of who speaks it. A reporter leaned forward. And the cost? Kelvin exhaled. All of it, he replied. The room exploded. His advisors panicked. This would cost millions. Maybe more. Investors would flee. Kelvin knew. He did it anyway. Outside, the people listened. Parents cried. Caregivers nodded. Elders exchanged glances. One spoke softly. He did not defend himself, the elder said. He defended the lesson. Back at the estate, business partners arrived furious. You're destroying your empire, one shouted. Kelvin stood calmly. No, he said. I'm choosing what it stands on. Zara watched the broadcast from her room. Asha sat beside her. Papa is shaking, Zara whispered. Asha nodded. Bravery often does, she replied. That night, Kelvin sat alone again. But this time the weight felt different, lighter, because guilt had transformed into responsibility. The system launched within weeks. Caregiver voices recorded. Alerts mandatory. No override without review. Hospitals resisted, then complied. Lives were saved. Quietly, one evening, Kelvin received a letter from the mother of the lost child. He trembled opening it. Inside, she wrote, You listened when no one else did. It won't bring my child back, but it might save another. Kelvin wept openly, not from pain, from purpose. Asha found him later. You did what was right, she said. Kelvin nodded. I wish I had done it sooner. Elders say, regret walks behind good deeds, but it should never lead them. The village spoke again, but this time with respect. He paid the price, they said. He did not hide. The Adebayo name changed once more, from redemption to responsibility. Yet one question remained. Would this change last, or would comfort erase courage? Elders leaned forward, because the final test was coming, not from the world, but from the heart. As the sun dipped low, red and yellow light reflecting off the estate walls, Kelvin stood with Zara and Asha. He had given money. He had given voice. Now only one thing remained. His legacy at home. Elders say, a man who saved the world but fails his house has only postponed his lesson, and the story waited for the final proof. Elders say, true change is not proven in crowds, but in the quiet choices a man makes when applause is faded. The world moved on. News cycles changed. Cameras turned elsewhere. Outrage found a new home. But inside the Adebayo estate, something remained unfinished. Zara was healing, walking without support, laughing again, asking questions that made adults uncomfortable. One afternoon, she looked at her father and asked, Papa, why did it take me almost dying for you to listen? The question was soft, but it cut deep. Kelvin did not answer immediately. He had promised himself he would never lie to her again. Because I confused control with care, he said finally, and I thought providing money meant providing love. Zara nodded slowly. Money is loud, she said, but Asha is quiet. Asha, who stood nearby, looked away. Kelvin smiled sadly. Yes, he said, and quiet saved you. That evening, Kelvin made a decision, not announced, not celebrated, just done. He walked into his study and opened a folder marked Foundation. Inside were drafts, plans, budgets. He closed them. Then he started fresh. The next morning, he did not go to the office. He went to a small community clinic. Unannounced. No cameras. No entourage. Just him. The nurse did not recognize him. The waiting room was crowded. Children coughed. Mothers worried. A cleaner wiped floors quietly. Kelvin sat and waited. He watched. He listened. And he saw it again. The same signs. The same dismissal. A young caregiver whispered to a doctor. The doctor waved her away. Kelvin stood. Excuse me, he said calmly. The doctor turned sharply. Who are you? Someone who has buried guilt, Kelvin replied, and refuses to bury another child. Silence fell. He stayed all day. He observed. He corrected gently. He insisted firmly. By nightfall, procedures had changed. not because of money, but because someone powerful refused to ignore the quiet voice. Zara asked later, "Did they know who you were?" Kelvin shook his head. That's why it mattered. Elders say, a lesson practiced anonymously is a lesson truly learned. Weeks passed, then months. Kelvin's presence became consistent. He rotated through clinics, schools, homes, not as benefactor, as listener. Asha watched him change. Not suddenly, but steadily. That was how real change happens. One evening, Zara collapsed again. Not physically, emotionally. She cried harder than she had since the hospital. "I was scared," she said, "even after getting better." Kelvin held her. "I know," he whispered. And this time, he stayed. Later that night, Kelvin found Asha packing. "Where are you going?" he asked. Asha paused. "I have done what I came to do," she said. Kelvin felt his chest tighten. "What was that?" "To protect her," Asha replied. Kelvin shook his head. "She still needs you." Asha smiled gently. "She needs you more." Kelvin understood then. Redemption was not about holding on. It was about stepping up. The farewell was quiet. Zara hugged Asha tightly. "You saved me," she said. Asha kissed her forehead. "You saved yourself," she replied. "I just listened." Years later, Zara stood under a tree. Older now, stronger. Children gathered around her. She spoke gently. "My father learned something late," she said, "but he learned it well." Kelvin watched from a distance, not center stage, exactly where he belonged. Elders say, the loudest legacy is the one that no longer needs its creator. Kelvin Adebayo had once been a man who ruled by control. Now he lived by care, not perfect, but present. And in the end, the Maid did not become famous. She did not become rich. She became something greater. Proof that quiet voices change the world. When someone finally listens. Final moral. Elders say, a child's life is not protected by power, but by the humility to hear the smallest voice. And so the story ends, not with applause, but with understanding.